I think we are in a geopolitical situation where it is really important that Europe continues to be a beacon of stability and continues to invest in its infrastructures and in its human capital.
Today, I have the pleasure to welcome in the studio Shiva Dustdar, who is Director at EIB Group Relations Luxembourg. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Jérôme.
It's a pleasure to have you. We all know EIB is here. We hear about big amounts of money invested all over Europe, and I invited you to talk about what's in it for Luxembourg. And so thank you for taking the time. So can you first please briefly present the EIB Group and its key initiatives?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So EIB Group, when we say EIB Group, we refer to the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund. Mm-hmm. We are headquartered in Luxembourg. We've existed since 1957, and what is perhaps really not as well known is we are a true instrument of the European Union with our 27 member states as our shareholders. And the EIB Group, really, if you look at it, has actually last year had a record year of 100 billion of financing, and across really all the key priority sectors. Mm-hmm. Climate, where we are really the EU Climate Bank, where 60% actually of our financing of the 60 billion has gone towards climate. Mm-hmm. Tech leadership, and we will talk about a bit later when we talk about Luxembourg, which is a critical digitalization and across all the sectors you will see that tech is going to be a key priority for Europe and therefore also the EIB. Mm-hmm. And security and defense, clearly also increasingly an area where the EIB as well is going to be doing its part. Mm-hmm.
And in terms of stability, I think you play a very important role.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we are in a geopolitical situation where it is really important that Europe continues to be a beacon of stability and continues to invest in its infrastructures and in its human capital. And therefore, I mean, one area that I would also like to perhaps highlight is what we do through our European Investment Fund, because as you know, a lot of the European economy is driven by the small and medium enterprises, the SMEs. Mm-hmm. And the EIF is actually the largest fund investor in Europe in the venture capital space, in private equity, but also does securitizations of bank portfolios that have loans to SMEs. And there, again, the EIF has a really interesting initiative, and we will talk maybe later about it, which is tackling the core challenge that we in Europe have, mm-hmm. which is the scale-up problem, mm-hmm. much more than the startup problem, where I think we have seen major positive developments over the last 10 years. Scale-up is why we lose many of our companies, including in Luxembourg, to other parts of the world. And there, the European Tech Champion Initiative, ETCI also called, is a really powerful response mechanism where through a fund-of-fund mechanism you have so far 6 member states that are have invested in this together with the European Investment Bank, and it gives effectively firepower to EIF to identify those funds in Europe that have the ability and the potential to scale up to $1 billion mm-hmm. size, €1 billion in size, because we need those funds to then put larger tickets into the scale-ups of 100 million and above. Because what we have seen is very often that our companies, as they scale up, they need larger capital. And in Europe, our funds are very often too small. Mm-hmm. Therefore, those companies very often move to other parts, the US or other areas in the world. And in order to tackle that, the ETCI is one of the responses. And I think it's also very relevant for Luxembourg, mm-hmm. because we have some really interesting scale-ups in Luxembourg, and I'll tell you about it later.
Now, how many unicorns do we have within the scope of EIB?
Well, I wouldn't say now within the scope of EIB, but let's maybe focus on the ETCI. As I mentioned, there are already 11 unicorns that have come out of the funds that the ETCI has invested in. And I mean, as you know, this is a very dynamic space. The more those funds have the firepower to invest in those scale-ups, the more we will have unicorns coming out. So we are quite proud of already in such a short time span having generated so much, but of course the challenge is a big one, and we need to stay on our toes as the EIB group to continuously support those companies.
Yeah, and I think a key element will be the integration of EIB group into Luxembourg, because I've been following this group for decades. I know Uli Grabenwarter really well. He was telling me about the ugly duck. I was shocked to know that we have one of the best European conference of venture capitalists here. I never heard of it. I was never invited. Of course, it's not for me, but there's, I think, a lot of this feeling that it's happening here, but it's not for us. A bit like if you take a mangrove, you know, they invested in Job Today, which is a local company, but 99% of their investment are not in Luxembourg. So very concretely, what has been the impact of EIB Group in Luxembourg so far?
Absolutely. I mean, let me say that actually it's amazing. We are headquartered in Luxembourg, and therefore I think I'm really grateful to this interview, because this is perhaps a well-kept secret of how much we have already done. Both the EIB group for Luxembourg, but also Luxembourg for the EIB group. I mean, it's a very strong partnership at the public sector level, and also, you know, starting to develop much more at the private sector level. But having said that, there is more to do, and that's why I'm also in this role. Now, what have we so far done? So if you look at the last 5 years, roughly around 600 million of financing into the economy. Now, a large chunk is actually has been 300 million to SES, of course, our prime jewel in the satellites business, and also the largest actually financing to a private sector entity in Luxembourg. 300 million is actually a pretty sort of average ticket size that EIB lends to many corporates all over Europe. But in Luxembourg, we don't have that many. So this is actually quite an important also sign of confidence that the EIB has given. Because one thing I should perhaps emphasize is the EIB group is meant to be catalytic. With our investment, we hope to generate more interest, and typically if you look at all our instruments together, €1 of EIB can generate up to 15 euros of other investments. So this is a very important element of how you actually create much more interest. Now, in Luxembourg, we have recently, as you may know, signed financing for OQ Tech, which is a very interesting company, a startup that started in 2016 by Omar Case. And this is a venture debt financing, and I will maybe briefly say later what we mean with venture debt, but this particular financing is giving this company the patient capital to really further scale up in the space of 5G Internet of Things connectivity, secure connectivity. So it not only is targeting our technological leadership in that space, but also has clearly a security and defense application. So this dual use, which is of course a very big theme increasingly. So that was signed recently, and just last year we signed Artec, which is in the 3D scanning space, 15 million venture debt. Again, a really dynamic scale-up entity already reaching on a global stage some leadership, and having come out of Luxembourg, and here we again with that sort of very timely patient capital, they can scale up, and then obviously this is all a path towards then much other financing that they can get either in the equity markets or in the debt market.
And it's a big change. I've seen Artyom arrive in Luxembourg in 2010. At the time I visited him in his office. It took a lot of time for him to get the support. Now he has his offices in Zeningerberg, incredible factory where he builds those 3D scanner. So it took some time to get the capital to follow the entrepreneur, but now it is. And Omar is another prime example of a great entrepreneur. He also told me very recently it took some time, but he's happy it's happening right now. I think you're also active in the public sector.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think the public sector, of course, is an important client. If you look at the EIB's overall balance sheet, around a third of its financing goes to the public sector all over the world and also in Europe. And in Luxembourg, it's been some of the really day-to-day services. The tram, the CFL has, the rail company has benefited from us. We are really, I guess, a very important, generally an important investor, lender to infrastructure projects to make them more energy efficient, more sustainable, more inclusive. So we have a number of sort of also. We bring some, social elements to the, whether it's on the climate front or on other dynamics, to the financing to make those projects, I guess, ultimately, more suited for everyone.
Yeah. So now let's talk a bit about the personal level. We know in Luxembourg, personal relationships matter. If you know the right people, it's easier to make things happen. You were raised in Ettelbruck. You were part of the famous Die Kirch Lycée, where we can find other people. I'm thinking about Romain Poules, who is a circular economy player. I'm thinking about Mario Grotz, who now he was chairman of the board, now he's CEO of Lux Innovation. So you've got those connections. So in your new role, how are you planning to act as a bridge between EIB Group and again the Luxembourgish ecosystem? There's a lot to do still.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, maybe a shout out to the college. When we say college, we immediately think of the Dickrische College. Some of our colleagues in Luxembourg City may think of a different one. And indeed, I think relationships matter. I'm very excited to be in this role right now, because having spent now 23 years at the EIB, most of my time, it's fair to say, I've spent outside of working on projects that were outside of Luxembourg on innovation financing. Now, I've always seen, however, huge potential in the Luxembourg ecosystem. And indeed, when I was heading our advisory, that's when I came across Mario Grotz in his role at the Ministry of Economy. And out of even those connections, we advised the Ministry of Economy on circular economy back in 2015, then on space in 2018-19, on the high performance computing, which
all the mega trends.
All the mega trends. And so advisory, I would like to also highlight, is really one of the perhaps hidden jewels that that Luxembourg can take much more advantage of, because we got some really stellar expertise in our engineers and our economists, hundreds of them at the EIB, who work on projects all over the world and can give good benchmarking. They can tell you about, how a project in social housing compares to what other countries have done, how a technology compares to other companies, and that knowledge you can't really buy or easily get off the shelf anywhere else, if I may say so. So therefore, coming back to what I hopefully what we are planning to do is making sure that through my role, the EIB Group becomes more visible. So thank you, Jérôme, for helping us on that, and also easier to use, so that we have, that people feel also more comfortable approaching us, that I can direct them to the relevant colleagues in the EIB or the EIF, and that we together look for really opportunities where the EIB Group can add significant value by being a smart, of course, lender to them, by bringing that knowledge, expertise to it, maybe through advisory, but also really help position Luxembourg more broadly in the EU and elsewhere as a very vibrant innovation ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think what people don't know, because I think ignorance is a big thing here. There's a lot of things we don't know.
Yeah.
Is that we do have champions here. I have two in mind I talk about a lot. There's, I think, the fastest growing startup ever in Luxembourg, I think, is Emma. I talked with the CEO last week. He announced me he's now at 40 million annual recurring revenue after 5 years. I don't think it's been done before. Of course, it's in the AI sector. And then there's G-Core, who is getting to 150 million after 11 years. So we do have those champions here. I'm sure they're watching this video. Yeah. How can they get in contact with you?
Absolutely.
And then how can you help them navigate? Because they told me they were attracted to Luxembourg by the Ministry of Economy and Lux Innovation, but it's difficult for them to talk to anybody. The short paths are not working.
Okay. Well, two things here. First of all, I'm easy to reach, whether
So
it's through
LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
or-
Absolutely, I'm on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Shiva Dustdar on LinkedIn so far, unless somebody has popped up. So certainly LinkedIn, but even if you just call the switchboard at the EIB, I'm sure they can get to me. So please feel free to reach out directly to me. But then what I should have also mentioned earlier, and I would definitely like to highlight, we now, so we have an initiative called Tech EU. Under Tech EU, we as a bank have committed to invest 70 billion in the next, so basically up to end of 2027, so that's end of next year already, 70 billion in digitalization, technological, autonomy for Europe. So really those type of projects that you're referring to. And with that, mobilize up to 250 or even more billion in finance. It's always this catalytic effect, right, of us coming in with our capital to hopefully pave the way for others, in particular private investors, to come in. Now, there we have a digital platform that has been set up. So if you just literally Google or put on a search engine Tech EU, you come into that investment checker, and by filling out a few boxes, you actually are directed to where you should go next. So there is also that digital platform for those who prefer that over reaching out to me directly.
Okay, and maybe a last question. We talked about the mega trends. We know the Minister of Economy has been working for years about trying to see where it's going after.
Yeah.
Where do you think the Luxembourgish economy is going? What will make Luxembourg's future?
Well, I mean, who am I to necessarily say? I'm always very impressed by the ability of Luxembourg to continuously reinvent itself. And I think that's something that we should really all give credit to Luxembourg. And where I see right now the opportunity is to build on what it has done on the space front, because we've really seen that, and those two, in fact, two companies that I mentioned, but plus Spire, which we financed another
Platzer,
space company, Peter Platzer, already more than 5 years ago with 20 million. So those companies, and have really created that ecosystem in space, and you can in a way take that then further to cybersecurity, to quantum computing, build AI. Of course, you mentioned also some entities there earlier, and in a way that I think, given also the huge defense spending needs that Luxembourg is trying to tackle, those are going to be sectors that are very much sort of in an integrated way, create this very vibrant ecosystem. Perhaps one that is maybe mentioned less, but is the health space. I also believe that Luxembourg has a huge potential to further build it out, and especially on the intersection of AI and health. I hope that in the Grande Région that they can do more. I mean, what I can say on the EIB group side, we have the financial instruments, we have the firepower to support it. We have the European Tech Champion Initiative, which I believe can actually invest in funds that have then the means to invest in their scale-ups. And we have our own thematic products which have a higher risk tolerance than regular banks, because we have our risk-sharing arrangements with the European Commission under InvestEU, so giving us the ability to come in before the banks actually can give a loan to the companies that we mentioned earlier. But this paves the way for bankability, and therefore our doors are open, and I'm around to welcome whoever would like to speak to us.
Yeah, and after what you just told me, I have to say I learned a lot. Thank you for taking the time. I think your biggest challenge right now will be to change what I would call the status quo. We see every week now the government trying to move things. There's some AI meeting, some space meeting. I don't think I've seen EIB there. I don't think I've seen GCOR or Emma invited at the AI conferences, despite accumulating €190 in annual recurring revenue. So I think this will be your challenge to activate all your network, get invited in those things, and of course, some of them banks will not be necessarily happy to see you because they are happy to go directly first.
Yeah.
So I think you're the right person as a Luxembourger to make things change, and I hope you will manage.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Jerome.
much.
I mean, may I say how you mentioned the banks may not like to see us. We actually I didn't mention that we do quite a lot with the banks.
Of course.
In sharing the risks, in giving them liquidity. So actually a third of all our financing goes to the banking sector. So usually the banks do like to see us in the room because they know that they can partner up with us.
Yeah, my remark came from, I just see that Luxembourg is struggling to change gear. And you know, if we talk about technology, you will always see Post, you will always see Proximus. These are two state players, one from Luxembourg, one from Belgium. We all know that they are part of the solution, but we also know they don't hold the solution on their own. So for me, the only solution is to connect all these dots, put everybody, including EIB, of course, around the table, and find new solutions to new problems, because we all read the news, we all understand we need to get faster, more decisive. And I think everything is there. There's capital, there's entrepreneurs, there's public players. We just need all this to work with a different operating model. That's my view, at least.
I agree with you. And perhaps really the last thing I would like to say is the fact that we have our headquarters in Luxembourg, we are so nearby. It would be, I mean, we should leverage it.
Absolutely.
We should leverage it, and thanks to you, hopefully the word gets out.
It will.
And
I'm sure.
And maybe we get invited to some of those discussions.
As we say in Luxembourg, we need to make it happen.
We need to make it happen. Let's make it happen.
The Prime Minister is 2 floors up, so it's not going to be very far. Thank you very much, and good luck with your new role. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jérôme.